Hi folks, how you doing? We're back in 2015 with Elite Chess Tournament, and as usually the first one to appear in the calendar is the one in Wijk and the nice and beautiful little town in Netherlands, in Holland. Nowadays called Tata Steel Chess Tournament. Some will remember it used to be called the Chorus, but okay, it has to deal with brand names. Now it's the Tata Steel, and we have a classical tournament there with two groups this year, and in the elite group, in the strong group, we have people like Carlsen, Caruana, Aronian, Dingliren, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, etc. A very strong group of players battling on the board. From the first round of this tournament, I selected one of the few decisive games. We had a very interesting battle between two of the most creative players in the elite. We have Vasily Ivanchuk from Ukraine with white pieces. It's been a while really since we saw Vasily in these strong tournaments. He's been out of these strong tournaments for a while. And with black pieces we have the ever creative Ivanchuk-Jobava from Georgia, who, if I'm not mistaken, played in the Challengers group last year, and he was invited to this group this year because he's always very fun to watch, a very strong grandmaster. So let us go. Ivanchuk with white, he plays 1 e4, and we have a Sicilian. Knight f3, knight c6, d4, the open Sicilian, e5 right away, 4 e5, the Kalashnikov Sicilian, if I'm not mistaken. Not very popular on the elite, I think, but okay, it's Jobava, so nothing could come as a real surprise in the opening. Knight b5, now d6 is played to stop knight d6 check, which otherwise would be annoying, I think. And c4. This is one of the disadvantages of the Kalashnikov if you compare it with a more standard Sveshnikov. If I think the point that white has the time to build this kind of a Marozzi bind against d5, leaving black with this backward pawn on d6 and all the consequences it has. But okay, it's an opening, it's playable, I guess. Now this move I'm not sure about, g6. Not that I'm an expert on this line at all, but I think black usually tries to exchange this dark squared bishop via e7 and then going to g5 quickly, if I'm not mistaken. So on g7 the bishop will be more or less looking at a stone wall. His own pawn on e5, not sure about that bishop there, but okay, it's a move, it's playable, I guess. Bishop to e6, some developing moves, knight 1 to c3, a6, knight back, knight f6, bishop e2, and finally the bishop goes to g7. You know, Jobava plays a lot this old Indian defense, and now there you have sometimes this bishop there also with d6 e5 played, so maybe he's not that uncomfortable with this position. Probably he will be looking forward to play something like f5 in the future, so who knows. Knight to c2, this knight has to move from there because he has no future on a3. Knight back to c2, rook c8, rook c1, both players castle, and well, the opening phase is more or less over. Knight to e7 is what Jobava plays here. It's simply the idea of picking the c4 pawn, attacking this unprotecting pawn. The knight isn't doing a great job here on e7, of course, but it's facilitating this attack. Here knight a3 was played, back the knight to a3 to protect. Why isn't the natural looking at the first side b3 not that a great move? Well, black immediately strikes with b5, taking advantage of the fact that this knight is not protecting here on c3, so the pawn cannot take on b5, etc., and getting a lot of compensation, I mean counter-attack here, lots of initiative on the queen side with the rook, with the hanging knight. So this would be a bit of a concession for white. That's why Ivanchuk plays the knight back to a3. Jobava goes back. Of course they could start repeating the position here, but fortunately they didn't. Ivanchuk played another move. He moved the rook to e1, which still is a developing move. I mean, you have two bishops and the pawn in front of it, and yet another bishop of the enemy, so you have a bunch of pieces on the e-file in front of the rook, but okay, it's still a move. The point is that now the knight can go to d4, now that the white knight isn't on c2 guarding this d4 square, and this is a very nice outpost for the knight here, protected with the pawn. Here f3 was played correctly, I guess. There is a possibility for white to snatch a pawn on d4, take and take, but black is getting absolutely lots of compensation, full compensation. This line, by the way, was showed by Yasser Serowan, who was commenting live stream on chess24.com this tournament, this round, and I think it's a very illustrative example, very entertaining and nice example of how black in this case can get complete compensation for the pawn. The key move here is to play knight to d5, attacking this covered attack against the white queen, which goes back, say, to d2, and now knight takes c3. White must recapture with the pawn if he doesn't want to lose material, and queen a5. Black is down a pawn, but I'm pretty sure almost everybody here would pick black pieces. First of all, we have the bishop pair, very active bishop pair. This bishop is attacking c4, the other is attacking the key c3 square, the pawn. We have a very active queen attacking the knight, attacking the pawn on c3. The rook on c8 is very active, while white pieces are kind of scattered around. This knight is not sure what he's doing here. The queen is barely protecting everything, the bishop isn't doing anything, not this rook either. So once again, black is down a pawn, but complete compensation. I think black must be even better here. So you wouldn't expect someone like Ivanchuk, strong player like him, to go into this position willingly. So after knight d4, he just plays pawn to f3, overprotecting e4. But queen b6 now, a very active queen for Jobava. Having a look here at b2, also this diagonal could be interesting. The bishop on e3 is so far unprotected, there is the king there, and if white has to play the moves like rook b1, certainly black can't complain about the outcome of the opening. Why not something like queen to d2? Well, there is a very nice move here, not easy to spot. I was certainly helped here by the engine. The point here is that black has this very nice and interesting trick of playing bishop to h6, temporarily sacrificing a piece if white is willing to take it, and really creating lots of problems here to white, thanks to this crossfire on dark squares in this diagonal and in this other diagonal. The main point is that white cannot take, of course, on h6, because the knight provides a discovered attack. Queen checks, while the knight is going to pick Her Majesty the Queen here on d2, so this is absolutely losing, of course. And otherwise I'm not sure what white should play here, other than that taking on h6, of course, it's which is absolutely giving up. This is a very difficult position, so ugly trick, which is the reason queen d2 wasn't played here. Otherwise rook b1 was played. I mean, not that beautiful position for white. You have to go back and down with the rook, the knight, to defend your pawns. And definitely seems Jobava got a nice game out of the opening. He takes on e2 with check, rook takes, and goes with the queen to b4, insisting on taking this pawn on c4. Rook to d2. Ivanchuk says, well, you have a weak pawn on d6 as well, so I might as well as attack it. Rook fd8. c5 was played by Ivanchuk, taking advantage of the fact that this pawn cannot move. The rook would be hanging on d8. There is a pin, but black has this queen a5 move available, protecting the rook and still attacking the pawn. Here we saw exchanges in this way. Rook takes d6 was played. It seems that black is taking the pawn and gets away, but not so much. Sorry. because black has this bishop f8 attacking the rook, forcing this exchange. Now the queen must leave the d file, queen to e2, and Jobava takes his pawn back on c5. And definitely I think black must be at least slightly better here. He has bishop pair, better pieces. I mean, this rook seems much better than the one on b1. Maybe not that much, but black has a comfortable play here. Ivanchuk once again goes back with the knight to c2, and bishop d4 attacking the pawn, attacking on c3, threatening to win a pawn. And the interesting point being that this bishop cannot be captured. Now e takes, and note that this knight has only one square available, which is d1, but unfortunately after it, not a brainer, the pawn is pushed, and this is a deadly fork with the pawn protected with the rook from behind. So after bishop d4, this bishop is untouchable so far. That's why Ivanchuk goes queen e1, protecting c3. And here is when apparently Jobava gives up this slight advantage he had. He plays b5, which certainly looks logical, but the point is that now white can take on d4 with the knight. He takes because he has, well, I mean, he couldn't do this earlier because this is obviously a fork, but now he has this intermediate bishop g5 move, which he hadn't earlier. He couldn't play earlier because the b pawn was on b7 and the queen was controlling g5. Slight differences which make I mean the position completely different. Now white was able to get this equalizing chance. The pieces were exchanged here. Black took on c3, the queens were exchanged on c3. Now bishop takes a2, an intermediate move as well, but white has no problem. He just goes bishop takes f6, attacking the rook as well. Rook d6 was played, bishop e5, rook e6, and rook a1, offering a rook endgame, rook and pawns endgame, which is accepted. And so we reached this position in which black has a passed pawn here on the a file, although a weak one, attacked pawn right now, and black has white has 4 against 3 on the king side. Okay, rook endgames are notorious for being drawish. I think certainly this is holdable, but mistakes are there to be made, and endgames aren't easy to play at all, as we're gonna see now. Rook e6 to protect the pawn, kings go up, and g4, king d7, f4. Ivanchuk of course has tries to get his passer of his own. Rook c6, attacking that pawn, king d4, king c7, and f5. A check with the rook, king goes up, and king b6 to protect a6. Rook a3, still I think this should be more or less draw, although it's very easy for both players, I guess, to go wrong here. a5 was played, e5, white wants to push e6, creating a dangerous passer here, and here we get to the nearly to the end of the game, where Jobava plays rook a4, and after Ivanchuk snatched the rook, Badur Jobava resigned. It seems this was a blunder, I mean transposing into the pawn endgame, which apparently is lost. So let us try to understand why is it lost. This could be a very good exercise to try to calculate, because it's all about calculation in pawn endgames. There's nothing else. Of course, black has to take, and I encourage you to stop the video and try to calculate this by yourself. Try to get something useful out of this video. This is a very interesting endgame. The point is that white plays king to c4, and although black has 2 passed pawns, they are doubled on the a file, and although white cannot get into the b file right now, the point is that if every time black, whenever black moves this pawn, the only one he can, White is getting there and he's collecting these pawns, leaving him with an absolutely crushing position. So these pawns cannot be moved right now. What can black try here? Well, king to c6, taking the opposition, so maybe h4, and here a couple of options for black. If he goes, for instance, g takes, then g takes. He could try h5, stopping this pawn. White goes with the king the other way, king d3. It's important not to rush with this passed pawn, creating this passed pawn, because it will be captured and it will be even dangerous for, I mean that must be even losing for white. So king goes back to d3. If king d5, e6, and if f takes, we push the pawn. King must hurry back, d6, but we have another passer, and this is going to be key to beat black here. What can black do? If a3, well, c5 check, king d7, we go with the king inside this the area of influence of this a pawn. a5, just to say something, but c6 check, and we're promoting this pawn. The other option, after b takes a4 and all these moves, which seem pretty normal, is that black goes, for instance, king to d7. But here white goes with the king once again back to d3, kind of rounding here his own pawn. King to c6, but now c4. I mean, it's difficult to make a move here for black because he cannot come here too much far away from this passed pawn threat with d6. So if a3, for instance, just white king is going to come here and pick up the black pawns on the a file and easily win this game. So first victory for Ivanchuk in this tournament, first round victory for the Ukrainian GM. We had a couple of other decisive results as well. Vashilagraf beat Hu Yifan, and Caruana beat with black pieces the other Chinese player, Ding Liren, if I'm not mistaken. So hoping to see more entertaining chess in the following rounds. Thanks for watching.